Hey, B2B leaders, feeling stuck in your growth journey as you've exhausted all your plays? Tired of doing things the same way and not seeing results? I'm Stacie Sussman, your host, and this is C-Suite Strategies, your podcast for the explosive business growth you've been chasing. We'll bring you conversations with industry visionaries who've truly mastered the art of scaling businesses. This isn't just theory, it's what we live and breathe every single day. Get ready for game-changing insights that'll transform your approach to business growth. Whether you're a seasoned C-suite executive or an ambitious founder, we've got you covered. C-Suite Strategies is your backstage pass to reaching that next level of business. Follow C-Suite Strategies now, and let's make this your new reality. Hello, fabulous people. Welcome to this episode of C-Suite Strategies. I am your host, Stacie Sussman, CRO of Rep Up Advisory. Super excited to bring you our latest episode, Ditch the Ick, a people-first approach to networking that works. So why are we here? What is C-Suite Strategies? We hope you've been listening for a while now. It is the podcast where we explore the art and science of scaling businesses with insights from industry leaders, growth strategists, and innovators. Today's episode is going to talk all about networking and how to honestly not dread it. I love it. Some people don't. So if you feel awkward, transactional, or even forced, we have an amazing guest for you, Rachel Rozen, founder of Connection Catalyst, a networking coach for professionals and teams who need to build relationships, but want to do it in a human way. Rachel, super excited to have you. Say hello to our folks on the pod.
Thanks so much, Stacie. Excited to be here and can't wait to have our conversation.
Amazing. We have a lot of conversations over the years about this. This is obviously a topic some people feel really icky about, and I'm kind of stealing your tagline. But before we get into our conversational part of the podcast, please share with our folks a little bit more about you, your background, and any kind of information so they can get to know you better.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's actually in hospitality and hospitality tech, and I spent the majority of my career there. My last full-time role, I was a chief customer officer at a food tech company. And when I left that role, I had no idea what I wanted to do next. I knew I didn't want to stay in hospitality. Wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in tech. And I knew I didn't want to be customer facing. I was really good at all of those things. I was just really burnt out. And in retrospect, I realized I'm now a recovering workaholic, is what I like to say. And I had always gotten every job from my network in some way, but it was quick. It was, okay, you need a job, or here's an opportunity for you. And I left in one job to go to another job. But this is the first time that I left on my own accord without anything else there and unsure what that next pivot was going to be in my career. And I realized that my network wasn't very wide or very deep. And the people that I knew were really the people that helped me got to all the roles that I had gotten in my past. But it wasn't what was going to get me to my future.
I love
And
that.
so I had to start networking from scratch. And I didn't think I really liked it. I didn't think I was good at it, but I just started doing it. And I realized that I had a lot of relationship experience because when you're in hospitality and when you're doing customer relations, anything customer focused is building relationships. And I had that skill set. I just wasn't flexing it for me as an individual. I was flexing it for a company. And using those skills to my advantage, I was able to then meet more and more people that allowed me to better understand that networking was a skill set and it's a muscle that needs to be built. And it's a habit that we need to have on a regular basis versus, oh, when it's time to find a job, which is what a lot of people say, now we need to network. But networking is happening in your professional life, in your personal life. It's happening also within your own company. And a lot of people think that networking is only outside of your company, but you need it to do better at your job. And especially leaders, your first team is really your cross-functional team. It's not the team that reports into you. And we forget that often. And we need to network. We need to connect with those people in our cross-functional teams because those relationships are what's going to really help you grow as a leader and help not just your team, but the company grow too.
Yeah, so important. If I look back at all of my corporate jobs, even starting out, I'll say thanks, Dad. I got my first job at Condé Nast. I was a sales assistant because my father knew one of the sellers' wives, and she got me my first role back in the day, and that kind of propelled my sales career. And then from there, all of my other jobs that followed were a lot from old bosses, peers, colleagues that had opportunities either at their company or a friend of a friend that had opportunities at their companies. And so I was networking probably before I even thought I was networking. And then I was also like an early LinkedIn adopter where every time I was on a sales call, I would just connect with people on LinkedIn even before it was a thing.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of people don't realize that every connection that you're making can be helpful for you or for them down the road. It's not always that person that is your mentor or your sponsor. And yes, you want to network to have those people in your orbit too, but it's also those dormant connections or those latent connections that can come back into your life as well. And we often forget that there's so many people that we interact with, but we move companies, people move cities. Like we used to be in the same city, we're not in the same city anymore, but we still talk, right? And that can happen, but lives happen to people, and we often don't put ourselves first and say, "Oh, this person doesn't want to talk to me, or they don't like me, or uh, they don't care about me," whatever it may be, but you're not top of mind for them. Like they have other things going on, but it doesn't mean if you don't reconnect with somebody that they're not going to want to have a conversation with you or be super excited to talk to you after not talking to you for a long time, too.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll give an example of, I'll say those like latent or dormant examples just in my life because I have been thinking about this one a lot. I worked at New York Magazine not very, but a long time ago. And there was a amazing seller who we all loved. She was like the quintessential New Yorker. She was older than me at the time. She had cancer, since passed away. And every so often, I always think about her when I do sales. She was just like the best of the best. And I always was like, I'm so privileged to work in her orbit because I always was like, one day I'm going to keep going and she's not going to be there because she was older. And I wrote a post on LinkedIn about it. All of my New York Mag coworkers and colleagues from decades ago wrote back, reached out to me, and we have calls on the calendar, like with a bunch of them and people I haven't talked to, some of them in like over a decade that were just like, oh, Stacie, we see what you're doing. We've been following you from afar, like would love to catch up. And some I reached out to and was like, so great to hear from you. Thanks for commenting on the post. Wasn't that a great, moment in time of our careers? Let's connect. So talk a little bit about those connections because I feel like I've gotten a lot of meetings in the calendar from people in past lives that just life has happened of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often and a lot of people that I work with, a lot of my clients are afraid to reach out to the people from their past. And it often that fear comes from the unknown. What are they going to say? Are they going to remember me? Is there a reason why I'm connecting with them? Everyone thinks that if I'm connecting with them, I'm looking only for a job. And or I'm trying
Not
to sell them
true.
something. Like they always feel like there's a hidden agenda there, but that's not necessarily the case. And I often tell people when I'm coaching them through, okay, let's look at who can you reconnect with? Why would you want to reconnect with them? So think about a moment that you're grateful for, that there was a gratitude. Maybe it was a time, like you said, with the person that you worked with at New York Magazine, that you just really appreciate the experience of working alongside of them. Is there a specific memory that you have that you want to reshare? Because when we rekindle memories, people get really excited to talk about nostalgic things and they want to continue that conversation. And I'll just give you one example for myself. Someone that worked with me in a restaurant here in New York City when I got promoted up to the general manager, but she's the same age as me and she worked for me. She got promoted to a manager and our birthdays are a month apart, so we always will wish each other a happy birthday. But randomly thought of her and I reached out to her. It wasn't during our birthday season and I was like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And she's like, "Oh my God, so great to hear from you. It's been so long." Because we normally only talk once a year. And she had just gotten a job at a hotel, and she was like, had worked in restaurants primarily, but then she remembered that I worked in hotels, and she mentioned to me that I was one of the best leaders that she ever worked for, and the person that she was interviewing with, they reminded her of me, and that's one of the reasons why she continued, and she needed help with something, and she wouldn't have normally even reached out to me to ask me that, but all of it came flooding back as soon as I sent her that text, and we ended up getting on a call and had, like, a 2-hour conversation, and it was literally just a phone call and picked that up, but it was just from a text saying, "Hey, I've been thinking about you,"
Love that.
and it goes in multiple ways, and you just never know what can spark from that, or who do other people know? Like, there's a reason why we have a network of people, why we have these connections, because they might know somebody else that could help or support you. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for things. It's also okay to just have a conversation. Be like, hey, what's going on? And catch up on life, because it's not that people don't wanna keep talking to you, it's just that they get busy, things happen, and there's only so many people that we can really connect with, and on a regular basis, and in all honesty, it's honestly it's about 15 people that we can really keep up with on a regular basis. It's not like there's thousands of people that we can hold on to. Yes, they're in our orbit, but they're not gonna be as close to us consistently. We just as humans, we're not capable of doing that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like I even go through my text messages and I hear you on the birthday seasons of like, who do you hear from in, the season or who do you hear from randomly? But I think I've been trying to reach out more broadly to people in past lives or former. I recently reconnected with, I had a favorite client at Macy's when I called on the Macy's account in New York City. She went out to start her own agency probably over a decade ago, and I was talking to a founder, and he had me demo his software, and I was like, "Oh, this reminds me of my Macy's client that, like, went out to start this," and I Googled their website, and, like, obviously, the company has shifted and evolved, and I reached out to her on LinkedIn, and I was just like, "Hey, Lynn," I was like, "Would love to catch up with you. I see you guys are doing some great stuff. Let's connect," and maybe there's a chance now that connected with her that we can actually work together because we're kind of in similar like marketing and marketing ops orbits. But it was just like something reminded me of her and I just
Yeah.
reached out and I was like pleasantly surprised but not completely shocked that she just wrote back so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, and I often tell people too, if it comes up in the moment, take that moment and send that message right there and then. Because if you don't, you're never gonna do it.
I love that. I love
And
that.
that person on the other end is probably waiting for you, because we are so every person has an ego and always thinks that it's them is a problem, or that people don't care about them, but the other person's thinking the exact same thing, and if you don't make that move, you just never know, and what happens? If they don't get back to you, they don't, it's okay, but also try again, because maybe that time wasn't the right time for them, or they missed the message, and, like, I have a lot of people that have I worked with when I was younger, but now they're married and have kids, and I don't, and so I get that life is different, but you could see a text and then something happens with your kid, and then you totally forget about me. Wasn't a me problem, like, something like,
It
life
was the
happened.
moment.
It was a moment, and that's okay, and you have no idea what's happening in people's lives, and just keep trying,
I
because
love
they
that.
will eventually come back.
Yeah, I just got a text from our bookkeeper that was like, wrote me a few days ago and I never wrote back. And I was like, it's because when she texted me, I was doing something with my kids, exact example. And I was like, I never got back to you the other day. But yes, I do want to meet. And here's the time we can connect and all that. So you're totally spot on. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people think it's them. Oh, why didn't they write back? Why don't they like me? Oh my God, my ego's bruised. But it's like, I was doing something else that had nothing to do with them, but I do wanna connect with them and want to make them a priority. It was just in that moment, it didn't work for me.
Yeah, exactly, and a lot of people tend to say that, how long is too long to follow up, or when
That's a
can it
great one.
be? And that's, another thing is I always say it's never too late to follow up. But if you miss something or it's taken a while, it's okay to apologize and say, apologize that this took me so long, or I really wanted to connect. You don't have to give your whole life story, but you want to also think about that every moment is building trust or pulling away from that trust from the other person. So if we're on a scale, we're either going positive or negative, and people want to be around people that they know, like, and trust. And that trust piece, you generally start on an evil level playing field, and it's either going to keep going up or going down. And you don't want it to go down. You want it to keep going up. And if you don't say that you're at fault or you don't apologize, then you're bringing yourself down, and that's not okay. You want to really try to build those relationships with people by being honest and sincere, because people appreciate the genuineness from you. And it's okay to say life got in the way.
Yeah, talk about that trust. I guess, how do you so one thing, if you have trust from someone you worked with, I'll say, because if you worked with them, you had a good relationship, they have an experience with you, there's a foundational level of trust there, and especially depending on how long you crossed over in your career. But what about those kind of, I would say, second and third connections? Like, for example, Rachel, you've introduced me to people, I've introduced you to people. How do you build trust with Rachel says to connect with Stacie, and because we both trust Rachel, we're going to make that connection. Talk to me about that, because I think that's where people like miss going deeper or expanding their network.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things there. I always recommend, number one, doing a double opt-in. So whenever I introduce you to somebody, I always check with the other person first. I check with you and you both say yes, then I make the introduction, because I never want to do it blindly, because we get in the same cyclical thing that just happened that we were talking about, where the other person gets too busy, they can't connect, and then you, as the individual who makes this introduction, is now losing trust too.
I
But the
love the double
key
opt-in.
But the key too is that once that conversation is had, you also go back to the individual that made the introduction and tell them how that went. Did it go good? Did it go horribly? Because their reputation is also on the line to know, should I keep making introductions to this person or maybe not? And maybe I need to have a conversation with this person. So let's just say I keep making introductions to you, Stacie, and every time I make an introduction to you, which hasn't happened, isn't happening, but if it was, that people are like, oh my God, she never gets back to me, like the conversation was horrible, then it's on me too to let you know, because it's not just my reputation that's on the line, it's your reputation as well. And I would want you to know, and I would want to know as an individual too, of just saying, hey, this is what's going on. Is there something happening in your world that's causing this to happen? So we can talk through it, but we often shy away from having those tough conversations with those connections that we're kind of close to or not that close to either, because we just write them off when maybe there is something else going on, and we forget that difficult conversations need to happen not just within the job but outside of the job too. And to continue to build trust with those two people that do end up connecting, it's how can you support each other beyond that one moment in time? And that's where, when I'm coaching people, I bring in my 3 I's framework, which is an introduction, invitation, and information. Can you introduce them to somebody else? Can you provide information to them? Is there advice? Is there a resource? It could be a podcast episode. It could be a book. It could be an invitation somewhere. So is it a webinar that you want to invite them to? Is it another community you want to invite them to? How can you continue that conversation so it's not just a moment in time? And sometimes it is. Not every conversation is going to continue. And it's also gleaning enough information from that conversation to say, okay, maybe there isn't anything right now, but if something pops into my mind, then I go back to that person and either make an introduction or to continue to carry on that conversation. And just as an example, I do dinners in New York City twice a month for executives and entrepreneurs. And I had a dinner last night, and normally it's 8 people. It happened to be 4 people. Scheduling didn't work out, and we still had a small dinner. And 2 people knew each other. 2 people I had connected with each other, but they didn't remember how they connected, and I forgot that I was the one that made the connection to the 2 of them.
I love that.
Because I make a lot of connections. And then as we were having conversation, 2 of them had been to one of my dinners before, but different dinners, and somebody was asking for help with something, and I thought of a person that I could connect her with, and I was like, "Oh, wait a second. That person was actually at the dinner that you attended. Like, you can reach out
Reach
to
out to
her. This
them.
is who I'm thinking of," and see. And that's what's helpful too, is like the more connections you're making with people, your circle gets widened as
Yeah, I
well.
love that.
And you can keep having different conversations and different connections with people. But I also recommend people spending time in different spaces, that you're not always in the same space,
Groups.
because when you
Yeah.
are, those ideas don't they become recycled. You're not sparking any innovation or anything new. And that happens a lot with leaders, especially in the C-suite, because they're so
Yes.
busy in the work that they're doing. That happened to me. That was like my biggest downfall. I was so busy in the work that I was doing that I wasn't focused on meeting anyone outside. And it should be
Right.
people outside of your industry, people that are maybe in a similar role, but in different industries, people that are just in completely different industries and different roles. Not saying that you shouldn't know people in your industry or know people that have a similar role as you, but if we're only talking to those people, nothing new is happening. It's all the same.
Which marketing channel closed your last 3 deals? How much did you spend? And what revenue did it generate? At RevUp Advisory, we help CMOs prove marketing ROI with real attribution, connecting campaigns to closed revenue. We create strategic alignment between marketing and sales teams. And yes, we know the buzzword. We're using agentic AI too. If you're ready to show pipeline impact and scale with revenue predictability, contact Stacie Sussman, CRO at RevUp Advisory. I love that. We've been showing up in new and different rooms lately, and I feel like it's what you're saying. There's been like a magic of creativity, innovation, sparking, honestly, curiosity, and how we can work with other partners, how we can work with people in different industries. I feel like I've been trying to show up in totally different rooms than I used to, especially like the rooms that we've met in New York City. And
Yeah.
it's just super interesting to see kind of the trail of introductions or the trail of referrals that has happened to them. And exactly what you're saying, it sparks kind of new ripples of second, third, and kind of fourth degree connections. And then I'll say one other thing was you were talking made me think. I was on a webinar yesterday with people in a newish community that I joined, super high achieving, amazing innovators, entrepreneurs, founders. And a bunch of them wrote to me after the call on LinkedIn, like, hey, connecting from the webinar, like, great, let's connect. And so I always do the like passive, like, great to meet you. It was great to connect. If you want to get to know me better, if they're local, let's meet in person. If not, let's set up like a phone call or a Zoom. But what I don't love, and so listen up, people, so don't do this to me, is great to meet you. I loved what you said. I'm looking for 2 things, new clients and speaking engagements. And if you have those, let me know. And I almost felt like the person was super genuine on the webinar and had really interesting things to say on the webinar. But then on the other hand, went in for, I'll say, the sales kill of like, but I'm looking for these 2 things. And they were very descriptive and direct, but I don't know them and I didn't have any trust or rapport with them. And that felt icky to me because I was like, I mean, you sounded amazing, but I met you for maybe 8 minutes, you know?
Yeah. And there's a lot of communities out there that I've seen forge ahead with that. They want the ask to be straight up front. They're not necessarily building the relationship, and people think it's okay to make that ask right away. Yes, there's moments and times where that can happen, but at the
Right.
same time, to your point, if you don't know that person, how can you support them moving forward in anything, really?
Right.
And you're then putting your name on them, and you met them for 30 minutes to an hour on a webinar, and there may not really be a connection. So, at the bare minimum, having that first conversation to learn more about them and then saying, how can I best support you? And they say, oh, I'm looking for speaking engagements or these types of clients. Keep, I'll keep you in mind. But to ask it straight up front can be a bit harsh. And that does seem much more transactional versus building the relationship. But I do tell people, don't be afraid to ask for something, but when the moment's
Right.
right. Like, we don't just come out and be like, oh, I need to get a $20,000 speaking engagement. Who can you introduce me to? Like, yeah, maybe I want that too. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean?
We all do.
Yeah.
Talk to me about two things. The connections, catalysts, and kind of the backstory of it. I was reading your bio on LinkedIn and on your website, and I know the story, but I think people deserve to hear it. You connected with 300 people in a year, if I'm getting the number right, Rachel.
Yeah.
What surprised you about that? How did you keep the stamina to do that? I think I met you sort of on your journey of doing that, and that's how we met and initially connected. So, talk to me about that. And I feel like that was probably uncomfortable for you at the time you were in your life, but you really put yourself out there. And I encourage other people to do something, maybe not 300 people in a year, but that kind of idea. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't on a journey, honestly, to meet 300 people. When I went back and reflected on that year, I was like, wow, 300 people? I can't believe I met 300 people. It just kind of
Amazing.
happened organically. But the funniest thing about it was that I thought that I wanted to be a chief of staff, see leadership from a different vantage point, work directly for a CEO. And I didn't know what that looked like. I could be in any industry, I could be anywhere, but I was like, let me think about doing that and then become a COO because I'm very operational as well. And I thought that that's what my path was going to be. I started with 5 chiefs of staff, and those were cold reach outs within a warm network of a few different communities, and I reached out to people within those communities, and then from there, it just kept getting introduction after introduction after introduction to the point where my inbound was more than my outbound, which in a sales motion is great, but in a networking
Amazing.
situation, you're like, maybe I don't wanna meet all these people. Maybe I need to, like, redefine who I want to meet or who I wanna connect with because it kept changing. I ended up meeting 40 chiefs of staff between Fortune 500 and nonprofit, but I
Amazing.
only started with 5 to get to that 40, but then that just kept spiraling and spiraling because every time I met with someone, I knew what my ask was. I wanna meet with someone who is whatever that next thing was that I was looking for, or people are introducing me. During that year of meeting 300 people, I got multiple consulting opportunities. I didn't get that full-time job. I never became a chief of staff, which is, in all honesty, was the best thing for me. I don't think I would have liked that role at all. Then it was also during a time where there was a lot of tech layoffs, and I thought, well, maybe I want to be when it was all said and done, I was like, okay, I'm looking for a role to be a chief of staff at a Series B tech company working directly for a CEO. But that's kind of what I already knew, and I don't think that's where I really
Right.
truly wanted to be. It just kind of, "Okay, these is where my skills are, this is where I could end up being," and I realized that during this time, it was important to extend my reach to different people that were outside of different industries, different roles, different genders, different generations. I wasn't just meeting with the same type of person. I was having these informational conversations with multiple different people. And that expanded my knowledge. And so I always tell people too, when you're looking for that next opportunity or you're starting a business or you're in a leadership role, or maybe it's your first time in the C suite, reach out to people that have had the job that you have. What did they
Yeah.
learn? What have they gotten? What advice would they give themselves? Because we learn best from others that have gone through that experience. We still have to experience it too, but we often forget to talk to people that are similar to us or have been in a similar situation to see what
Yeah.
we can glean from that And maybe who else did they lean on that they could maybe introduce you to that you could get more information from as well? Or what spaces did they show up to that they would recommend you joining so that you can better yourself as well? Because networking is a lot about personal growth. You don't always get that
Yes.
personal growth in an organization, but you get that from the communities that you're a part of or the people that you're connecting with. Because when you're in an organization, it's often black and white in a way of these everyone's
Yeah.
acting the exact same way.
Same
But
way.
when
Yeah.
you're but when you're in communities, you start finding communities where people are acting differently until it becomes everyone's acting the same way because you've been there for so long. And then you reevaluate, do I want to stay here? Do I want to find something new? And it's okay to leave communities.
Yeah, we
It's
do that
okay
on like a
to
quarterly, yearly basis.
exactly reevaluate and say, is this where should I still be here? Or is it okay to leave or put this on pause, find something else? Go where you feel like you're gaining the most from it as an individual that's going to help you to continue your own success.
I love that. I feel like we met in a community in New York City,
Yes.
and I am no longer part of that community. I feel like my ask for you when we last spoke was just like, where are rooms you're showing up in? Because I was looking for new rooms to show up in, and you sent me a bunch of ideas, and we're like, check out this and check out that. And so I love that. I think people sometimes maybe stay because they feel obligated to, or they stay because they don't actually do the practice of reevaluating of like when I joined that community, what was kind of like the ROI of that? Did I achieve that ROI? Yes or no? Yes, and I want to stay, or yes, I achieved the ROI, but I actually have grown in my career as a person, and this community no longer serves me or our company. And I don't think people do that enough times. I think sometimes they just like let it roll, that credit card kind of invoice comes out, and you're just like, oh yeah, that community that I haven't been to in 3 months. Okay, let's keep rolling with it, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I honestly recommend, look at it quarterly if you can. At
Yes,
the bare
I do.
minimum once a year. But if you can look at it quarterly and just kind of see what's going on. And I am a huge believer, and when I coach people too, is invest in places that you are going to show up in. I don't care if
Yeah,
you make millions of dollars or you make tens of thousands of dollars. It's not about the money. It's about what the experience is that you're going to get out of it. And whether you're paying $5 for a community or you're paying $15,000 for a community, you have to be able to find the time to invest in that community because your ROI is based upon the time and effort that you put in, not on the
to
money that
show
you
up.
invested. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. If you're not going to show up and then you look at that, community quarterly or yearly and you're like, this is a great community, and they offered me 75 different events, virtual, online, retreats, etc., and you didn't show up for any of them. Well, maybe it's time to leave the community because you never even attempted to show up, or you can keep going with it and say, next year I'm going to show up. So I'll say that's a huge one. And then I want to do one last point. I'm on your LinkedIn. It says,
yeah,
I empower you to turn icky networking into sticky relationships, the connection catalyst. And I love that. So just kind of talk to me here about that, because I feel like I personally love networking. I think you now do love networking, but I don't know if everyone does. So, like, how do you make icky feel sticky, and like how did you even go about that? I think we're talking about communities, but what if we're have some listeners that like, I'm a C-suite, I'm so busy with my work and running companies and teams, like I only have like a pocket a quarter to kind of like show up, but where am I showing up? I feel like some people almost feel immobilized because they just don't even know where to start.
100%. And sometimes it's starting within your own company, and we forget
Interesting.
that, especially in the C-suite. Everyone is looking up to you, whether they report directly into you or they don't.
Right.
How can you start networking within your own company? How can you it's not just about having skip level one-on-ones. It's about meeting people in completely different parts of the organization. Let's just say you're in sales. Do you know anybody in finance? Do you know the person that's doing accounts receivable or accounts payable? That's so far removed from you as an individual. That's a CRO, as an example. But if you understood the accounts receivable, you might better understand your sales process or what
Yes.
they have to go through. That's just an example. But we often don't have those conversations because, like, oh, they're so far from me. I don't need to know that person, or that's not meaningful. But everything is meaningful. Do you think that person that's in accounts receivable is going to do better at their job if they have a connection to the CRO? 1000%.
Yeah.
And that's where you start. You start within your own company. Where can you show up? Are there meetings that you can attend that you're just a fly on the wall? Often in virtual companies now, or most people are virtual and or hybrid. Some people are back in the office. But even when you're in the office, and if you remember back in the day in the corporate world, the people that were in the C-suite, where were they? Behind their closed door in their office. They weren't even on the floor walking around or meeting people. And the more time you make to have connections with people, everybody eats lunch at some point. Maybe it's Tuesdays is a day that you go to lunch with a different group of people and you invite random people to go have lunch with you on Tuesdays. There's a lot of different ways or tactics that you can go about that as a leader to start building those relationships. I remember in my very first job, I was working for Hyatt and I was a corporate management trainee. And in my first week, there were, I think, 6 of us that were corporate management trainees. It all started within the like 6 weeks of each other. And the general manager and the head of HR took us out to lunch. I still remember
That's
that lunch.
amazing.
I know exactly where the lunch was. That restaurant doesn't exist anymore, but it was a New Orleans style restaurant in DC. And I still remember the meal. That was 20 years ago. And that was meaningful. I still have a relationship with that general manager today. He
That's
no longer works for
amazing.
Hyatt. He's retired. I don't work for Hyatt. But that built that relationship, and I always felt that I could go and have a conversation with him, and he always supported me throughout my entire Hyatt career. And to me, it started from that lunch because
Right.
he
And
really wanted to get to know us.
right. And he kind of led the olive branch out and said, like, let's take these new hires out. And I assume he was much more senior in the
Yes.
organization, but I would say testament to him probably as a person, but also a testament to corporate culture they were probably looking to promote too. And so if you're in a company that looks to foster that corporate culture and that kind of interwoven across department, connect with the seller connects with finance and finance connects with editorial or whatever. Like you made me think
Yeah.
of my job at New York at Daily Mail, where I started and I was like one of the third or fourth employees in New York. We were in a tiny office in Soho on Green Street. I'll never forget it. We had someone come in and the woman was like, this used to be my apartment. She
Oh
came into
gosh.
our office in Soho. I was like, this used to be our apartment. And when I left 4.5 years later, we were in entire floor in a brand spanking new building and Astor Place. But because I started there when the company was so small, I was in sales and we worked near the editorial department in publishing. This was kind of like a church and state relationship. You kind of didn't speak to each other, but exactly what you said. I knew everyone at the end from IT to finance to marketing to operations to editorial. Like I knew people across all the functions because I would go over and introduce myself and say hello. And if I saw them, at the kitchen or in the bathroom or at the elevator, I would talk to them. But I just don't I think everyone has that mindset.
Yeah, we're often, and I did make a lot of relationships with people that I worked with, but I was also very just heads down in my work. And that
Right.
happens to so many people, is that we're so focused on what our goals are, what our tasks are. We're not focused on those relationships. But when we build those relationships, we're more likely to get promoted. We're more likely for the company to succeed. And we're more likely to just generally feel better at the job that we're doing
Love
because
that.
we're working more collaboratively versus working in silos.
Big thing
And
for us. Take those silos down.
exactly, take those silos down, but those silos come from points of connection. And when you're in working relationships, getting to know people personally makes a big difference.
Huge.
What are their kids' names? What do they like to do on the weekend? Who's their favorite sports team? You could hate sports. I don't care if you give a lick about football, basketball, baseball, golf, it doesn't matter. But if that person loves it, you ask them about it. The same thing, like you could absolutely hate movies or dislike the music that this person likes, but they love it. You lean into that and maybe you will start to like it. You never know. But it's not about you. It's about how do you make the other person feel? How does the other person feel seen? And how can you build upon that? Because you're also starting to understand their why and their values and why are they there? Like what do they want to be there for? And they're there because they're making sure that they can buy tickets to the next sporting event, or they're there because they want to travel the world. Whatever the reason is that they're there, they want to send their kids to college. Lean into that so that you can help support them because they're going to feel more cared for and more seen and want to work better collaboratively across the company.
Love that. With that, we're going to wrap our episode. If people want to hear more from you, work with you, attend upcoming events you're hosting in New York or beyond, talk to us about kind of all the points people can connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Always have great content on there around networking and how to, like you said, take the icky out of that and build those sticky relationships. So there's a lot more to talk about there. I do a free webinar once a month. And I also in New York City, if you're in New York City as an executive or an entrepreneur, I have dinners twice a month for small groups, maximum of 8 people. And you can apply to attend one of those dinners as well. And the goal is to bring people together from different genders, generations, industries, and roles. Because as we talked about in this episode, where can you spark ideas if we're talking? We can
Yes.
spark more ideas when we're talking to people that are outside of who we normally know. So happy to always have new people attend those dinners and join the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you to our listeners for hearing everything about networking, turning icky into sticky networking situations. I hope you've learned a thing or two because your next big business breakthrough may just be an episode away. Thanks to our listeners. We'll see you soon. Bye. As we wrap up this episode of C-Suite Strategies, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you, our listeners, for tuning in and engaging with our podcast. Your commitment to business growth and operational excellence is what drives this podcast forward. A special thank you to our guests today for sharing their valuable business insights and experience. Your wisdom is a gift to our audience, and we're honored to have had you on our show today. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you follow and subscribe to the podcast. Your help supports us to reach more ambitious business leaders just like you. And if you didn't enjoy it, well, I guess I'll see you never. This is your host, Stacie Sussman, Chief Revenue Officer at RevUp Advisory, signing off.